Well, good afternoon, everybody. Um, Good afternoon, or who knows if you're coming in from other parts of the world, maybe it's not afternoon. Um, but we are here to talk about your career related concerns, questions, vision for yourself, what you want from your career. We approach your career looking at it as an opportunity to learn and grow and to become who you can become. And today, well, we have a bit of a follow-up from the last two career labs. And so we thought it'd be fun to have most people's least favorite question in interviews. Just tell me about yourself. So that's our topic title today. But I want to say that our main focus for being here is to support you in your career. So any questions that you have, at any point in your career, whether you're just beginning, maybe out of college, or whether you've been at the same company for 10 plus years and a bunch of things happened during COVID and now you're looking for other opportunities, or if you are in a position where you're just looking to get some support in maybe the politics at your company or how to really align with your boss or your manager, anything career related, we are here to help support you in that. And it's going to be myself today. Dr. Gordon Medlock is on standby in case we need him to jump in, but he's working on some things for this weekend. We have our More Life training weekend, which you have heard me talk about probably every career lab because it is the fundamental thing for your social and emotional intelligence and kind of taking a little bit of what we get into here deeper. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about the topic of the question, tell me about yourself. So it's whether or not people are asking that in an interview or not, in some way every question has to do with that. And right behind that question, this is something Dr. Gordon Medlock was sharing about last week, is behind the question, tell me about yourself, is two fundamental things when you're talking about your job is, do I get shit done? So is this person somebody who gets things done? And the other one is this somebody that I want to work with? Am I going to enjoy working with them on projects? So those are the two things that are behind that. And then when you have the question, tell me about yourself, people want to be able to get a sense of who you are and how that relates to that job. So you don't want to just go in and say, give them a long history, unless that's this, hello, welcome everybody, welcome Cynthia, welcome Susan. You don't want to just give a whole bunch of information that doesn't apply to that unless you have that kind of rapport with somebody. So it's going to always be different. But I want to open this up to questions from everybody. If you want help with the question, tell me about yourself, that's great. If not, let us know what questions you do have. Where are you at in your career and what support do you want? Welcome, everybody. And again, you can type your questions into the chat here on Zoom. If you're viewing in through LinkedIn Live, you can type your questions into the comment section. And Jane Coletto will get those over to us here in the Zoom meeting. But of course, I always love it when you can jump in the Zoom meeting and share your questions here directly.
Hey, George, it's Caesar Lostino from Chicago.
Caesar, good to see you, man.
Hey, good to be with you. Good to be with you. Sorry, I'm on my mobile eating lunch while I'm with you and the rest of the team here, but
rock and roll.
I appreciate it. So two questions. One, I'm struggling with the duration of that response. And even before that, like the general framework. I'll share with you, just this morning, I was in a networking call, but it was still career related. And I responded with, let me share a little bit of personal information and professional information. And that was the framework that I used, but I'm not sure if that's right. That's just something that came to mind as I was asked that question from this new networking contact on LinkedIn that I have.
Well, what's your purpose with this new networking contact?
Well, he actually reached out to me, and it was career related. He wants to get into the field that I'm in right now, diversity and inclusion. So he proactively reached out to me, said, would you be open to a 30-minute call? I said, absolutely. I like networking for purpose. So I did that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So in this call, so your purpose was to get to know him. His purpose
Yes.
was because he wants to get to know you, and also to have the possibility of you helping him get into a position somewhere, or
That's right.
some guidance.
Spot on. That's right.
Okay, cool. So you're a mentor for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brand new relationship, but I guess from that perspective, he's probably seeing me as a guide, as a coach, as a mentor. Yep, I can see that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back around again to what would be the outcome that you'd want from your meeting with him?
But what I shared with him today is that I generally do want to help him get into the field, and want him to keep me posted on his outcomes. So I shared with him 6 things I would do if I was in his situation. And as I was closing up the meeting, I said, okay, here are 2 things that I need from you. 1, keep me posted on your outcomes, and keep me posted on what I shared with you in terms of, are you getting the success that we both envision?
Okay, cool. So to the question of how much do you share in a situation like that, I tend to, the approach that I'll tend to take is, given that you're in more of a possible mentor relationship with him,
Mm-hmm.
would be for you to share maybe a little more vulnerably than in the purpose of that would be, and you may have too, I'm not saying, I'm kind of speaking to the audience here, is
Mm-hmm.
because if you can share some about you and your journey, I thought what you said about personal and professional was great. Because it then opens it up for how much is he going to deal in, or how much are they, I don't know whether he or she, how much are they going to deal in?
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see, it's not we all have our judgments about it, but you just will, if you share a little more, if that might invite somebody who's kind of looking up to you to say, oh, wow, Caesar's like, down to earth, and I can't believe he just told me this. And you know what? I kind of feel like I can trust this guy, and I'm going to take it a little further. So you might kind of be able to get more of that deeper rapport with somebody that way. Now, but on another token, if you have the sense that if you ever get kind of your heckles up and you're like, this is, I don't quite know about this, then you might not share as much about yourself, and you might kind of make somebody work a little more to get to know you and kind of see that you really trust them. I mean, this is a little different than in an interview. He's kind of interviewing you here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But how's this landing?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love what you called out on the vulnerability, because, I wanted to, obviously, as always, kind of show up authentically to say, okay, here's some personal things about me, my background, I'm an immigrant, this and that, things that typically in a business call I wouldn't share. But since he reached out to me, I said, well, let me just, again, it was kind of off the cuff, like, okay, well, you're asking me, tell me about yourself. Here are 2 things I want you to know, or a couple of things I want you to know, both on a personal and business front, since it was more a business call. So I appreciate that. No, I'm all in.
Oh, cool. And how did you feel getting off the call?
I felt really good, optimistic, I would say, overall, in terms of saying, yeah, he sounded genuine with responding to my ask, saying, hey, can you keep me posted on your outcomes? I want you to be successful. And part of me knowing whether you're going to be successful is you circling back with me to letting me know, hey, yes, the ideas that you shared are useful. I did feel, back to the question about, tell me about yourself, I felt a little bit long-winded when I responded, to be honest with you. I heard myself talking about myself and enjoying that, which I think most people do. And I was just like, hence the question to you, saying, what could be the time frame I should keep in mind when answering that question? In this context, maybe it's just a couple minutes, rather than kind of like, oh, and this is something else about my background. I'm a 30-year professional, so there's a lot there. I wasn't sure where to go.
My hunch on it is Well, one of the things I'll do is check in with somebody periodically through a networking conversation of saying, am I losing you? Or like,
Mhm.
I'm actually
Mhm.
really enjoying talking about myself. Is this okay? and just
Yeah.
and just kind of seeing where they're at.
Mhm.
And
Got it. So,
and
mhm.
and if they're kind of like, oh, because that might, if he has a real kind of intention that he's feeling, or I keep saying that they're
It
feeling
is.
wrong.
It was him, Mark, in this case. Yep.
Okay. So if they are if they have somewhere they want to get, but they're hesitant to share more because they kind of want to be um, have some deference to you, it can really help to say, are we getting to what you want to get to in our time today?
Mhm.
You know, you had said you wanted to get to know me more. How are we doing with that? And because it can really then empower them to say, oh, this is so great. I hope that we can continue this kind of conversation. And I
Mhm.
want to make sure we get to this today.
Makes sense. I love that. I think I haven't been mindful of that. Historically, I've been sort of cut myself off, which is what I did this time around abruptly. Like, okay, I'm sharing too much. But what I'm hearing from you is check in, maybe pause and hear from him, or check in with the other person and say, hey, is this enough? Whatever I may ask him, that will pop up for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I want to point out something else too here, Caesar, is that for you to be enjoying yourself and allowing yourself to be a gift of sharing about your professional history, your personal history, that kind of thing, and having fun with it, that is absolutely wonderful. So I also want you to be allowing yourself that too. And by
Mhm.
checking in with him about if you're working your agenda the way you want to, that can actually take some of that anxiety off of you,
Mhm.
and you can allow yourself to have more fun. Because if you can go through these in networking meetings and having more and more fun with it, it's going to be more nourishing for you. You can be like, wow, it was really fun to kind of talk about myself and get a perspective on myself just by having somebody listen to me.
Mhm.
I really appreciated that. Wow. And you might even be like, Mark, did you know that you're such a good listener that you hold space for somebody so well? Like,
Mhm.
I'm,
Mhm.
I'm, I'm
Mhm.
enjoying talking to you, but I'm also wanting to make sure that you're getting your agenda met here.
Love it. I'm totally aligned. Thank you.
Excellent.
I appreciate it.
Caesar, that's so great. I mean, this is like I don't know, not like we were ever, I think most people I talk to are like super comfortable in conversations and stuff. And sometimes when people are really say they're really confident in conversations, I'm like, well, how out of touch are you with the person you're talking to? So I got all kinds
Right.
of judgments about it. But I just think this is wonderful stuff. And also on top of it, many of us coming out of COVID time, and I went to my first networking meeting like a few weeks ago, and I was so nervous. I was like a high schooler. I was like my first day of school. It's like, oh my god, am I wearing the right thing? So I just think
Mhm.
I think a lot of people could probably relate to sort of how to be in conversations with people. So thank you so much, Caesar.
Thank you as well. Appreciate it.
Totally. So can you state again, Cynthia, I'm checking your question. Can you state again what they are looking for when asking this question? Oh, okay. So the question in an interview. Um, so there's behind every single interview question, there's two things that are at the heart of every question, including tell me about yourself, which is, does this person get shit done? And do I like this person? Is this like a decent human being to be around? And so that then when you're going into an interview and somebody asks you that question, let's say it's the first question, that could be, if I was asking that question in an interview, all I'm doing is giving myself a little bit of space because I just came out of whatever meeting or somebody else was just in an interview. And I'm just like, oh man, I need a second to breathe here while we're transitioning to this new person. So I'm just going to say, tell me about yourself as a way to give me a little bit of space. And then I might start kind of clicking in and paying attention to the person. I froze for a second, and paying attention to the person who I just asked that question to. And so in that scenario, I would do a very quick, welcome everybody. We've got some more folks joining on. Good to have you. I'll do a room reset here in a moment. But when at the start of an interview, when somebody says, tell me about yourself, you want to very quickly, I wouldn't spend more than a minute, definitely not more than a minute, but maybe only 30 seconds on, okay, here's a quick snippet of my career. Maybe I might bring in, I'm a mother of two. I'm at this phase in my career, and this is some of my experience. I saw this posting, or somebody recommended this job to me. And sorry, just muting a couple folks. Welcome, Georgia. And so I took a look at the position, and it looks like it's in line with my experience and also where I see myself developing. And so I'm really excited to be meeting with you today to learn more about this position. And so it's a very quick overarching thing. I think bringing in a couple personal details can kind of help somebody place you in your life. But you don't need to give a whole long script and try to impress with that. Because if somebody is talking to me, trying to impress me with, I went to this school, I got this, I was at this point, and in this company, I did this, and this, you got about like, I'm pretty ADHD, so you got about like 15 seconds with me. And so there's a way in which, if you're trying to impress me, I'll start losing interest at some point if we're not checking in. And then to jump back to what Caesar was working on is, if you're talking for a little bit in that responding to the tell me about yourself question, it's totally fine to say, how am I doing in telling you about myself? Is there more that you want to know in one direction or another? And to check in on that. So I recommend 30 seconds to a minute, and knowing that you're kind of giving the other person some space to ground themselves and to start building a relationship with you. Does that help, Cynthia?
It does. So, because that is always a tricky question for me. I'm always like, well, they have my resume, and my cover letter. Are they really asking me about like my professional accomplishments, or are they wanting to know more about me personally? Also, is this a good time to maybe mention any like committees or boards that you might serve on, or volunteer work in the community, or not?
Okay, so that and Gina Pope, I was told this answer this question as my personal elevator speech. Yeah, I would say a short thing. And so Cynthia, in that, you want to tie whatever you're saying to that position. And I don't, if there's something about a volunteer experience or some kind of other thing that you've done that applies to that, then I'd absolutely say it. I'd say, oh, and you'd probably want to know that I have this experience in this thing that applies to here. And so it's a very just like, they just want to know that they're talking to the right person. They just want to know, especially when it's the first question, they just want to know that like the next 30 minutes of an interview that they're spending with you makes sense. Is not going to be a waste of time. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. And then by giving those highlights, and so you definitely want to practice when you're going into an interview. You look at, if you know who's going to be interviewing you, awesome. If not, look at the company, look at what your skill set is that applies to that position. And when you give your 30-second to minute elevator pitch, you're going to highlight the things that you think will be of interest to them. And chances are then that they're going to ask you more questions about any things that they have more questions about. And so you don't need to go on and on because they will lose interest. You want to get to a point where you're having a back and forth conversation. Sweet. And then I wanted to check back with you, Caesar, was there any other questions that you had? I think you had mentioned having 2 questions. And
no, you addressed both of them. It was the timing and the framework.
okay.
So the timing, I just heard your response about 30 seconds to a minute. And then the framework, maybe you can, I guess, underscore anything, but is there a general, you mentioned personal and professional is just fine. That's been my general framework right now, but is there another recommended framework for responding to that? Maybe an outline I should think about?
I don't have any recommendation on that. I think personal professional is great. I often will say that. If anybody else has recommendations, I'd love to hear them. So I'm just going to put that out to the group. Anything else? I see Dr. Kai Sorensen recommended a book from Malcolm Gladwell, Talking to Strangers. So there's probably some other things, and I would love to hear if anybody has anything, drop it into the chat. I'm going to do a quick room reset. This is Career Lab Wednesday. Many of you have been on here before. Some of you, this is your first time. So the purpose of this time together is for you to get support in your career. Now that may be you listening in and just being with a group of people who are like-minded, working on developing themselves in their career. It may be that you have specific questions that you want help with at any point in your career, any phase, any question. Everything is open career related. And so we're here noon to 1 p.m. Central every week to help you with this. This week, our focus is we were talking follow-up from last week's Career Lab about the question, tell me about yourself, because several people came on and said, I hate that question. I hate it when people ask me, tell me about yourself. So we figured we'd play a little more with that today. So that's some of the context, ways that you're able to participate. I love it when you jump in on Zoom, like Cynthia, Caesar, Eric, Susan, Tiffany, Rachel, James, Jenna Pope, Georgia, and Dr. Larissa Chuprina. That's awesome. That way you're able to come off mute and we can work together directly. If you're not able to jump on directly, you can ask your questions through the comments or chat section in the LinkedIn Live. And Jane Coletto, our lovely assistant, will get the questions over to us. Great. Oh, thanks, Eric. We found this video on TED to be very helpful around this question of how to talk about yourself. So Susan, I see that you have an answer to that question, but you'd like to practice. Are you able to come off mute and work with us?
Yeah, I'm off mute. Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, we got you.
Okay. So I just had gotten some coaching that my answer is a little bit longer than just 30 seconds, but I'd love to read it and get honest, constructive feedback to it.
Fantastic. How's that sound for everybody? Willing to give some constructive feedback? Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
So, when I get asked the question, tell me about yourself, my proposed response is that every day I get up excited to collaboratively create living spaces that enrich people's lives and stand the test of time. I do this through active listening, which enables me to build rapport with my clients and to truly understand their needs and requirements. Tenaciously researching and sourcing unique and functional products allows me to delight my clients, and collaborating with my associates and trade partners ensures the optimal design and materials are selected for every project. My passion for creating beautiful and functional spaces that requires both creative and technical expertise started when I was working for several Fortune 500 companies and honing my project management skills, and realized something was missing and left to pursue an interior design education and career. The pivot catapulted me into selling interior design services and furnishings through several boutique showrooms, where I converted individuals who walked into the showroom into loyal clientele while increasing revenue. My clients continue to reach out to years later. My love of solving puzzles led me to kitchen and bath design, where I used my strong analytical space planning and project management skills to increase the size and scale of remodeling projects that I sold and completed every year. I continuously managed 4 to 6 kitchen and bathroom projects in all phases of the project life cycle. Through this, I learned and implemented a good, better, best methodology for budgeting and estimating projects, which enabled our team to begin winning $150,000 plus projects. I felt a pull to my roots, given my grandfather was a stone carver and helped build the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., when I was presented with an opportunity to represent and sell architectural natural stone to architects, builders, designers, and tradesmen. I ran with this opportunity and have cultivated a love for natural building products and materials, honed my consultative sales style, and exercised my transparent communications and commitment to serving my clients, which has enabled me to build a strong architectural and design network, doubled my sales every year, and become a trusted advisor to my clients. But there's something missing. And when I was presented with your opportunity that provides XYZ, whatever the opportunity is, I was interested, and I think I would contribute XYZ to your company. So anyway, that was kind of my way of like trying to tell them why I was even there looking and how I could contribute to that. And that is going to be different for every job.
Well, any feedback from the group overall? Because I can certainly jump in here. My initial response, Susan, is that some of the stuff that you said about halfway through, got it. George is saying too big, less wording. Some of the stuff that you said halfway through, I would put at the beginning. Like the thing about, was it your grandfather?
Yeah.
And then also that you have, that you've sold over 150K in projects, or whatever those specific bullet points were, and that you've been doubling your sales every year. Because right there you have my attention. And I'm like, oh, cool, this woman's a badass. Let's talk. And then some of the sort of your journey through it, then I get more interested in how did you come to be who you are, because you now have me interested with the results that you get. And the thing about your grandfather is just interesting. So it's kind of, I know that I'm talking to somebody who's got this like in their, I don't know, I mean, in their blood, so to speak. How's that land?
Okay. I hear that, and I know that, yeah, it's good. It's good feedback.
Okay.
The attempt was to answer the why do I get up every day? To share, like, why do I get up every day? And then, what are some of the skills that I use? And then without going through, a laundry list of, I've got 20 plus years of experience. I don't want to go through every single thing, but how did I travel through my space? How did I travel through my career and get to where I'm going?
Okay.
So, but I hear that what I heard you say is that, you know, something to hook them into that.
Yes, yeah, I think so. But we're also getting some more feedback from James. Great content, too long, please condense. What's most important to you? He's asking, and what would be most important to your potential employer? And so I think those are some good questions. My overall thought on this, Susan, is what you just read to us might be a really good like LinkedIn video, or if you were doing a like, I'm Susan Bertram, this is me, just so you get to know a little bit about me, and you kind of did a video where you're talking about yourself. I think that would work well. If we were sitting down over a cup of tea and I said, so Susan, tell me about yourself, and you basically just recited what you just said, that wouldn't work so well. But if you have all of that content and you're comfortable talking about it, then you might be able to make that work well in kind of a conversation where you're like, well, you know, my grandfather did this, and I've had some career things, and you can start weaving that in. So I think it's really good that you're doing what you're doing, and keep going with it and keep practicing it. But depending on the scenario that you're in, I think has a lot to do with how you'll share what you're sharing. Does that okay? That sounds like it's landing.
Yeah, I hear that, and I know it's reading it, and for me right now, it's just getting it ingrained in my head, so it could be much more conversational.
Okay, cool. And that's another thing too, is the more, I don't know that this is, you know, I don't know quite how to put this in, but there's nothing wrong with you talking about yourself. Like what Caesar was saying earlier about how he was having fun is sharing about himself professionally and personally. There really is a time for that in networking, and perhaps in a high level interview, where somebody would say, tell me about yourself, and you'd give them your life story, so to speak, in a 3 to 5 minute kind of way, just to say, well, let me give you the ways that you can kind of put me in the boxes that you understand. You know, there's this part of my life, this part of myself. You know, please stop me if you have any questions, or if you're getting bored or something, you know, to kind of be able to have that rapport with somebody. But for you to get comfortable sharing about your life journey so far, there is a time and a place for that. And I think it's a really important skill to develop as you're developing in your career.
Yeah, I appreciate all that feedback, and this kind of scenario for me was not intended to be like an elevator pitch that I would say to somebody in a networking situation. It's intended to be answering a more serious, like, who are you? Tell me about yourself, where you have that 3 to 5 minute time frame.
Okay, so this would be like the owner or somebody in a business who, you know, somebody's like, hey, you should really meet with Susan, you know, and they're setting up a time to really get to know you.
Right, or it's an interview, you know,
Okay.
where you're sitting down in an interview, and so this was not intended to be like something I would spew out at a networking meeting or in the elevator, so to speak. So maybe I misunderstood a little bit about what the real question was, but it is.
No, Susan, this is great. I'm getting more. So yes, there's the quick 30-second to a minute elevator pitch that you want to be able to do on some interviews and in networking meetings. But the type of interview that you're talking about with this, Susan, you do want to be able to share about yourself for 3 to 5 minutes. With the way that you're doing, I do think that you can rework it some.
And I'm sorry, I lost you for just a few minutes. So you said
I would rework it some and move some of the middle stuff up to the front.
Okay.
But for the kind of interview that you're talking about, and I think where you're at in your career, you do want to be able to talk about yourself like this for 3 to 5 minutes
Yeah.
and practice with a lot of people. I would go to networking events and practice and are you going to be on the More Life training this weekend?
Yeah, my group is leading it. We're running.
Fantastic. Are you going to get a chance to do the exercise we do where you share about your journey there?
I don't know.
I would say to your lab so Susan is going to be helping produce the More Life training this weekend, which some of you are familiar with and some of you have not attended yet. It's a deep dive in social and emotional intelligence. We have lots of teams on it. It's a fantastic training. So Susan's team is going to be helping produce it. And I'm letting Susan know that there's a behind the scenes leadership training that happens for assistants. And Susan, I think you should use that leadership training as much as you can, even though I know you're going to have a lot of responsibilities. I think you should say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm getting practice sharing my narrative. Sometimes we call it a redemptive narrative. Sometimes we call it, in this case, it's kind of your career narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So you use the time this weekend, and I love that you're using the time right now with the career group.
Okay, great advice. I will follow up on that tonight. Thank you, George.
Cool. And from this, yeah, absolutely, Susan. And we kind of gave a little more context for everybody listening. From there, is there anything else that anybody wants to add for Susan around her response to the question? Tell me about yourself. But this is in a higher level interview. Cynthia.
I was just gonna say, and actually I would be repeating probably what you said, like it was really good and there was some very interesting information in there. And so I was just gonna say to kind of also just maybe rework it so that you have the information placed differently. I really like what you said, Judy, about having this story maybe upfront about her grandfather and then like going into her accomplishments with, achieving these monetary goals and stuff like that. Cause that does really, like, my ears perked up at that as well, and then going into the other stuff. So great. I think it was a really in-depth and thorough and very interesting speech, but maybe just kind of like you said, reworking it a little bit. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much. I get I need a hook at the beginning. So thanks.
Totally. And now I'm gonna kind of blow it all up a little bit by saying that the most important thing, Susan, is your presence.
Mm-hmm.
And your availability to yourself, to your emotions in the moment while you're talking to somebody. So that's another reason to practice it more this weekend and other times, especially on this weekend, because I know that there's a lot of emotions, and given your role in it, you're going to be having feelings. Yeah. And so to actually use that as a way to deepen your ability to stay present while you're having a lot of feelings, because that'll actually, and then it will flow even more. You want to be able to, I remember before leading one of the evening workshops, Dr. Judith Wright said to me, hey, GD, on these Zoom trainings, it's real different than an in-person one, because you're literally looking at a screen and a lot of times you don't see anybody's face. So she said, this is a real opportunity for you to just enjoy the shit out of yourself, to have fun and to enjoy you talking. And so there's an element of that for you, Susan, to be bringing into this interview.
Mhm.
of you enjoying the sound of your voice, noticing the feelings you're having as you're sharing about your journey, allowing yourself to feel the fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy of your story. And that then this is the feminine power that we talk about. As you open yourself up to that, you then are inviting the person who's listening to you,
Yeah,
it's the person interviewing you, to kind of go on their own internal journey as you are sharing your journey with them.
yeah, great,
Cool.
thank you.
Cool. Great
Great
question, Susan.
advice, I
And I
appreciate
love that we're getting to explore it. We're bringing in both the masculine and the feminine power poles in this, in terms of having the details that you want in there, and then also the being space.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Well,
George.
oh my goodness, we are rocking and rolling. We're at 12:40. So welcome everybody who's joined in since the last check-in. We are talking about the question, tell me about yourself. And we are exploring many aspects of this question today. I love this. And there's a couple ways for you to share. I love it when you can jump in on Zoom and work with us directly, like Susan, Cynthia, Caesar. And you can type your questions into the Zoom chat here, or if you're viewing in through LinkedIn Live, you can type your questions into the comment section and we'll get those here as well. So I'm getting a few more questions over here in the chat. Let me know what you're wanting help with. When I interview, from Carol, when I interview people with this question, is tell me the story behind your story. Oh, so Carol, so you're wanting to have people share more about the story behind your story. I think that sounds interesting. So maybe that's, Carol, if you can share more in the chat, that'd be great. Or if you're able to jump on Zoom and share with us, I'd love to learn more. And then James, we have a question from you on another note. The speaker is speaking in detail about stuff. I would think it would be appropriate to speak in general with highlights. Let the employer inquire about those things of value to them. That conversation would take forever. Perhaps it would be more value to share more details. Okay, so James got it. So you're referring back to what Susan was sharing and just some more feedback on that. Okay. Hello, Eric.
Hey, kind of the discussion's been jogging my brain. Kind of thinking back to my undergrad, which was crazy now, 6 years ago. Seems like it was just yesterday. And then just kind of recent or somewhat recent interviewing experiences. My take on this whole situation is usually I'll give kind of a really high level summary. I only have 6 years worth of work experience, right? So it's not like I have decades to talk about. So usually I'll just mention, graduated from Purdue in 2016, studied supply chain management, started out as a blah, 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 blah with company, then went to this role, blah, 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 blah. Maybe I'll throw in started out with blah, blah, blah. I trained over 1,200 people, whatever. And then with this role, I did such projects as blah, 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 blah. And then kind of end on the current role and then mention like one or two key details about that. And then kind of leave it at that, kind of keeping it high level, throwing in a couple of juicy details of like the really nice stuff I've done. But like you mentioned, you have like 10, 15, 20 seconds maybe to get that impact. So you want to, have that solid content, but you don't want to over talk yourself. And I've run into that issue all the time where I want to include stuff, but then I don't want to drone on for like 2 minutes because it's, again, speaking for myself, it's really easy for me to do that.
Got it. Well, so Eric, you're for where I think you're at, that's often going to make sense of kind of just getting across the details the way you put it. And you're an analyzer, I'm assuming, probably an analyzer regulator.
Yeah, sure. I'd have to double check with all that.
Okay.
That was.
If you haven't done the More Life training yet, have you?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, I would love for you to do it. And in that, there's the learning the ability to kind of make emotional contact with people, that will help you develop the rapport and kind of know, like if you're talking and they're not paying attention anymore, and then how to get back in where you're connected. Because one of the things that often happens with actually everybody, but the way that I see it happen with analyzers, is that you'll keep giving details because your language style is details. So an analyzer,
right.
I'm thinking about my parents actually, how they could just have like details and go back and forth with data, and they can do that forever. But it doesn't mean that they actually make heart-to-heart contact, and so will ever actually get anywhere and actually do anything. And so for you to be able to develop the skill of having a little more vulnerability as you're developing in your career, you're going to need to learn to do what Susan's doing, where you're sharing about yourself and your career narrative, your life narrative, who you are as a person, because it really does matter, in especially as you develop in your career. Because if I'm hiring, I need to know that I've, like with Susan, that she has a passion for what she does, is she really cares. That is sometimes more important than have I taken all the right courses? Because Susan can go take the right courses, but am I really hiring the right woman? And so if I'm talking to you, Eric, it's like, am I really hiring the right man who's going to do what he needs to do to make sure the job's done?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I try to, work in some small talk, like beforehand, like we went to the same school, or kind of find some connection with the interviewer person to kind of get that like basic personal rapport going.
Cool.
And then kind of just, I try to balance between enough detail to give them the overall gist of me, but then still have, but kind of like, I hate to use the word, but I guess like tease them almost a little bit, to be like, oh yeah, tell me more about, this forecasting you did or whatever. But I know like the detail thing that's definitely bit me in the butt a couple times in the past, or like, like for example, there's an internal role I applied for in my last company I worked for, and my mentor actually was one of the interviewers who interviewed me. So it was really fortunate. I decided to give some good feedback. And basically one of the key things was I talked my way out of the role. Basically, I went, too far into details when giving questions. So, I understand that whole thing firsthand. So I try to kind of keep it, situation, task, action, result, and kind of keep it straight to the point. And then if they want to ask further questions, I'll be happy to give them those details. But kind of in general for this, tell me about yourself, I usually try to keep it. But I have sometimes thrown in kind of like a personal detail, like, married, I have a kid, 2 dogs, I do Toastmasters and other stuff for fun or whatever, to kind of add a personal cap to the end of
Definitely. I think that's great, so people can picture you kind of where you're at in your life.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, Eric, Georgia, I want to get your question in, and I wonder if you can come off mute. And Eric, I also want to show you a quick screenshot of something I think you would dig. The developmental model. So this is, I don't know if you're familiar with spiral dynamics and the work of Don Beck. He looks at global politics and how countries move through growth developmentally. What he would say about Russia is that they tried to jump to they tried to jump beyond capitalism too quickly, and it created a sinkhole. And so, but this model has to do with individuals, and most of humanity is always trying to jump up here to these transcendental principles: acceptance, love, grace, responsibility. And we avoid this stuff. We avoid looking at this stuff down here in ourselves, our scarcity, trust, aliveness. But really, all of this is happening inside me as a person all the time. And so when in an interview or in a conversation with somebody, if I can catch where the kind of sinkhole is happening, or what I'm unconscious of in developmental emotional land, that can really help me actually make contact. So if I'm trying to assert in an interview the things that I know and assert about myself, but I'm also wanting affirmation from the authority, from the interviewer, and it's not really their job to give that to me. If I can kind of do that internally and just catch that I'm wanting affirmation and say, oh, in kind of a little, oh, GD, you got this. Just that little tiny bit can then help in the rapport, in helping build rapport. So where you talked yourself out of the job, my hunch is that you had a hunger for the job and for affirmation, and you kept going to assert yourself. But you were missing some of the lower levels. And so in the end, and you were speaking out of scarcity, you were asserting, but out of scarcity instead of trusting. And so you actually did a self-fulfilling prophecy. You created, like what your mentor said, is you talked yourself out of the job. So if in the moment you can be aware of these lower developmental poles and see how you can tend to those internally, then you don't need to kind of talk yourself out of a job or out of a role. So just wanted to give a quick share on that. It's a big thing, and we're not going to have more time to go into it more now, but that might be fun to kind of play with over the week and just noticing kind of where you're at.
No, that's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't. It makes sense when I'm thinking back onto it, but I never would have thought of it like that.
Cool. And Gina, isn't this overthinking this?
Yeah.
There's the current climate of workplace and job search. Say more.
That's what it seems like to me. It's like really like dissecting it like the layers of an onion. And I try to go about it, and I just was laid off. I'm trying to go about it as having a conversation with the individual rather than trying to pack all these details into 2 to 3 minute elevator speech. I'm trying to put it in that package, because I think that would, you get in your way. You get in your own way if you're trying to look at, like the diagram you just shared with us. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but that's just really making things a little more complicated in my perspective, unless I'm missing the total concept. So please forgive me if so.
Well, no, thanks for speaking up, Gina. I think it depends. It depends on the context. And sometimes absolutely we can overthink stuff. Absolutely. But it can also be really helpful to see where we're at. And depending on what the relationship is, it might make a difference. Now, Gina, I might want to find out more, but Georgia, I'm so sorry. I saw that you had a question earlier and I haven't gotten to it. It may be that we will want to pick it up next time. But are you available to come off mute and say more about your question? I'll assume that's a no, Georgia. But let's connect again, and I want to make sure that we're supporting you. And so Gina, I would love to hear more. Oh yeah, Georgia says next time. So tell us, you recently got laid off, and you are in the interview process now?
Yes, I am. So after several weeks of just applying to several jobs, I'm blessed to start getting feedback and requests for some interviews back, which are coming up at the end of the week. But I find that this discussion is very, very helpful. But at the same time too, I don't want this to get in the way. Like dissecting it to that degree, to me, is making it more complicated. And if I have to think that much about, you said even you mentioned to Susan to do a video on LinkedIn. Is it that necessary? This is what the climate of the job search is nowadays? Because to me, it seems it's impersonal. I just have my own views, and I don't mean to, please forgive me if I want to be respectful to everybody's opinions and perspectives. But if I have to go to that degree to have an employer find interest in me, that's a that's a deal breaker for me. To have to jump through hoops.
So Gina, there's a bunch of it. I think again, it's about context and
Okay.
Depending on if you're going for a certain kind of role, it might make sense to have a video on LinkedIn. But
Cool.
as far as I know, 95% or more of people don't have a video on LinkedIn. So it's obviously not a make or break kind of deal. And I don't know what kind of role are you going for?
I'm a project manager. Yeah, I do a lot of process improvement and project management. My elevator speech, as a former healthcare provider, those skills have always been innate. And it's something that I've always done as a former healthcare provider. And I've honed those skills and actually, went and, became more educated in those fields, which has now transitioned me out of that arena. So the past, 15 years, I've been more in the project management, performance improvement aspect. So these are this is where my career is at. And types of roles I'm looking for, but I just find it, I'm like shocked, being into this, into the current landscape now, it just seems like you have to jump through so many hoops, and things are so impersonal because of, the landscape, and, we're still transitioning between a pandemic and going back to normal life. I'm just listening, and I'm hearing, all these different things about, having a video on your profile, and, having to dissect every question that you might be asked for an interview. Sometimes I think that can actually, I don't know, I might be archaic, but I'm just.
So Gina, I'm taking a look at your LinkedIn.
Pardon me?
I'm looking at your LinkedIn right now. And so you're trained in Six Sigma?
Yes.
So you, as far as I'm aware, I mean, you have a significant amount of training and skills, and what you just told me sounds like you have, there's got to be places that are looking for what you have.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so many brilliant people on this call just listening to the experiences they have. I'm just shocked that you would have to these individuals would have to jump through so many hoops. Yes, you have to have a mixture of emotional intelligence and the ability to communicate effectively and efficiently. I guess I'm a little bit archaic in this whole aspect of it. And
well, Gina, so we've got to end in like a minute. I have a session at 1, but what are you wanting support with?
I wanted to hear what people had to say about this question. How do you, please describe yourself. Tell us about yourself. That's one of the first questions that, all the interviews I've been on is what I've been asked. So I just wanted to get some perspective, and it's just interesting just to hear, what we have been discussing. So I don't want to derail anybody. Finish your session out.
Great. Well, it sounds like, so one of the things, Gina, that you in joining in here is what you get to practice it with is to continue developing yourself.
Mm.
And so if you've got questions around, I think you might have been listening on when Caesar was on. And so continuing personal development through the lens of your career. So we approach career as an opportunity for you to keep becoming who you can become. And is this position a good fit to help you develop yourself, to help you realize your potential? So that's the come from, the kind of context of this group. Does that help?
Oh, for me, yes, that puts a little better frame of context.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, sweet. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Again, we're here every Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. Central. And I am looking forward to seeing some of you at the More Life training this weekend. I will be one of the team leads. And reminder, you can send questions in beforehand as well to help tee us up. And I will see you next week.